Okay,
Yeah.
so let's see. Jared, do you want to talk about your process first, or do you want me to start?
Um, guess I'll just talk kind of briefly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna approach this reference. I'm gonna try and find some nice kind of angles and larger abstract shapes that I'll build off of at the beginning, and try and kind of design the shapes be a little bit more dynamic, maybe around the bag, and I'll kind of be changing some things in my head as I go, so we'll see how it goes. Because I like the eyes, I'll probably change to be more regular, and then adding some more definition and planes in there to show some structure.
So yeah, I mean, what I'm gonna be doing, well, right now I'm, like I said, just trying to figure out the overall flow and balance of the piece. So I'm trying to kind of use abstraction to kind of get a bearing on exactly where, you know, I kind of want everything to be placed. So trying to start out as loose as I can, as abstract as I can. And I'm just trying to kind of get a sense on where the overall structure can sit in the context of my my piano. And I'm trying to decide what I want to be centered and what I want to maybe be going outwards, because there's definitely going to be some form that's kind of going outwards. I might have this kind of going out like so. Maybe you have that. Maybe you have that head kind of peering down like so. We have this arm kind of going outwards. Like so it might still look like abstraction to you guys, but right now I'm trying to get I'm basically trying to get a clear bearing on what it is that I'm going to be laying down and exactly where I'm going to be laying that down. Okay,
So for Kai, for your all your block-ins, do you usually approach it with this kind of abstraction method?
yeah, kind of. Like I kind of want to go from, loose to, I guess, structuralized.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to, like, I usually I don't want to start structuralized because every time I do that, the painting ends up looking really stiff.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my case, I know some people do that. Like they start super, super tight and they end super, super tight, but it still looks really nice. I
Yeah.
don't really understand how they can do that because it's seems hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I like to. I kind of vary between getting a couple structural lines down and then also doing kind of washes of color and
Yeah,
value and then just kind of sculpting into things. And I find it depends on the subject. If it lends itself towards more of an abstract kind of sculptural approach, then I like to push it in that direction. But sometimes if there's a lot of elements that need to be really precise, I might start out with a little bit more structure.
very cool.
Yeah. And one thing I'm looking at the reference and I'm deciding to rotate it a little bit to give it a little more character. So it's at an angle from just being flat to having more of a tilt to the head. So that I think that'll add a little more character and make it kind of a whimsical, fun painting.
Well, right now, what I'm doing is I'm trying to actually get some of the localized colors that's surrounding the
Mm-hmm.
subject. And I'm basically, so like the sand, and I'm basically just kind of thinking about it when I'm mixing in terms of like what we talked about yesterday. First, find the local color, and then ask yourself, what is the value? Is it lighter or darker? And then ask yourself, is it more red, yellow, or blue? And
Yeah.
basically, ask yourself these questions, and so right now I'm just kind of getting a bearing on the gray that's kind of around the figure or around the subject.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when I actually do get started with the darks within the dog, yeah, I'll be able to, I guess, um, balance that and have proper value compression, as opposed to just starting with the straight darks. Because if I start with the straight darks, I'll have nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
And chances are I might get it too dark. So I'm trying to decrease the chances of me happening across that dilemma. So everyone feel free to ask either me or Jared or both of us, just any questions that you guys may have. It can be in regarding to what we're doing right now. It can be just regarding to art in general. Like, doesn't really matter. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Jared, did you explain what brush you were using to do that wash? It was so beautiful.
It was just a large filbert brush. So I could just get...
Was that a rosemary brush?
I think so. Yeah, I think so, because I don't have any of the smaller. Yeah. It's just, I think it's just a natural hair, so you can find the equivalent with most types of brushes. It's a nice soft, as long as it's a softer brush, usually those work nice for washes like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So right now what I'm doing is I'm still, like yesterday, trying to find the color notes within the structure. And I'm just kind of placing the color notes onto its appropriate locations for right now. Not really worried too much about, we're not really worrying too much about details per se, more so the general locations of the values. Okay. So I'm going to start with my dark midtone, and I'm going to venture towards a midtone. And remember, we don't want to go too much into the lights at the very beginning. We want to just kind of stay within that compression of maybe the 4 to 6 value on a value scale. So just the general midtone to dark midtone before we actually venture into a little bit more of the light side. That's something to keep in mind. Jared, how's it going with yours?
Good. Just trying to find the form in a couple spots.
Yeah.
And like over here on the right side, I'm going to push that a little bit to give more of the illusion of a light source, lighting it from a little bit off to the side, so it's not quite as front lit, just to give a little bit of dimensionality to it, because it might be tricky with no shadows to really show that form.
Nice. Just kind of curious, well, the students here, who has like everyone has had some kind of painting experience before, right? Like, I'm assuming. How did it feel, by the way, just kind of divulging in these two styles of paintings in these couple of days?
This is Sandy. I'm virtually a beginner.
Uh-huh.
So I'm learning a lot. I mean, I've painted for about a year, maybe year and a half, but not with any real instruction.
Uh-huh.
So this has been a little overwhelming, but very interesting. And I actually joined the academy yesterday so I can take one of your courses.
Oh, perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah, she signed up your atelier program. So it'll be really good for you, Sandy. Just follow Kai's instruction and just do all those exercises he assigned you to up your drawing skills. And that will set you off with a really, really good foundation that you will see improvement much faster. And I'm kind of like you. I started painting. It was like 15 years ago. I didn't really get any drawing instruction. So I was able to paint, but I always struggle. So my growth was kind of stunted for a long time until, I saw Kai's course and then starting to pay more attention to drawing. And that's where you start to get better again. So it's good for you to start from there and just really pay attention to all the techniques he talked about in his course and just do a lot of practice, and you will see your improvement going much faster.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm reading Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, and that's been helping, but there's a lot that's missing, obviously, and the color mixing is very difficult. So that's why I asked so much about the colors.
Yeah, that could be a...
I didn't attempt the cat last night because I don't have any of the translucent red oxide, and I didn't know what to substitute for it. So,
for that, you can just use a mixture of red and yellow and a little bit of blue.
Okay.
But the transparent red oxide is just the brown. Might be just a little bit more transparent than like if you were to mix your own color with it, but it really doesn't matter. I didn't use that color until I took one of Daniel Pease's workshops, and he told me that, he likes using that color because it's like a nice shortcut.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, like, you don't need any specific colors to ever paint anything. All you need is just the basic colors. If you have red, yellow, and blue, you can paint anything that you know, or mostly everything that is available to you. You know what I mean? So, don't worry about not having particular color. Like it's fine, it doesn't matter. Like sometimes whenever I go to workshops, I might be missing a few colors from like the workshop list. I'll just figure it out. I'll just be like, okay, what is the closest color I can get from the palette I already have? Maybe I can pre-mix something to emulate the color that the teacher was using.
Yeah.
See what I mean? So,
yeah, if you look at one of our instructors, Ellie Wilson, she strictly used the 3 primary colors, just ultramarine blue, cat red, and I think it's lemon yellow or cat yellow and white. That's all she uses. And she paints all kind of landscapes. She's able to mix any color just from the 3 colors. And she just took 2 first places in 2 plein air competition in a row in the past 3-4 months. So really color, it's not that critical. Like most people think I need to have this magical color to make it work. Like if you pay more attention to the value, and Sandy, I would encourage you to pay more attention to the value, because value always comes in before color. If your value is wrong, the color is not going to do the trick. Like it's really the value that's creating that 3-dimensional illusion. So a lot of times we will do value study, just, black and white, grayscale, and just break your plans down and see if you're able to get the values right. And after that, all you see is like right now, when I see both of them, all I see is how dark it is and how light it is. If you take the color away, that's all it is, just light and dark. Yeah. So if you're able to see just value, your mixing will be much faster because you're not mixing a specific exact color, you're mixing the value. And then after value, you look at color from a perspective of temperature. And once your value is right, then you ask yourself, is this warmer or cooler? Then you're not really thinking about, am I mixing that exact color? You're really thinking about value and the temperature. So if you look at Jared right now, the top of the cat is not that green color at all. But if you're looking at the value relationship, how light and how dark each shape is relating to each other, and same thing with Kai, the value relationship is right, then the form is gonna tell the story, even though it's not the exact color, but it's going to start looking realistic. And that, if you do it that way, you feel so free, like you're not tied to the color anymore. And that is one of the big, epiphany moment for me, is to realize it's really about the value, not about the specific color. So that's, a good tip for you. If you, go through the lessons, just pay attention to those things, you will see you can read a lot out of each demo.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have anything to add, Dirk?
Oh, I was just saying, I was thinking like in this one, a good way to talk about color temperature is since the reference is a little bit flatter and I'm trying to add dimensionality, I'm going to push a little bit more into the cool range of colors for the light and go a little bit warmer in the shadow, because if the shadow doesn't have that cool light in it, it's by nature going to be slightly warmer. So that's how I'm approaching, and I'm just going to try and keep that in mind as I'm trying to build this form out to show light and shadow early on.
Yeah. That's good. Oh my God. Alexa, stop. Just talk to me randomly.
I just wanted to say that I'm kind of in the same situation as Sandra. I'm certainly a beginner at this kind of art. For years, I've done, as I said, more or less like watercolor kind of cards and things like that. And my painting style has been more like what you would call, I guess, graphic. Yeah. Not at all realistic, very much of a cartoony, whimsical kind of element to it. And so this is a very different approach to painting, not just in the actual technique, but the actual treatment of the subject matter as well. And that's why I just didn't, it's going to take me, I think, quite a while to learn how to do this. You guys make it look so easy. And I know it's not. It's years of like having learned and practiced and such. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm going to be signing up for some additional classes and such so I can have some guidance with my practice and learn. So
awesome.
And I just want to say how much I really appreciate these demos and this class. You know, it's been quite wonderful for me to be able to see people actually working and do this and how they do it. And like as I said, it's very difficult for me to paint thick, and I've never done oil painting before. So that's going to be a different thing to try to learn how to treat that as opposed to like acrylic or watercolor. So a whole new adventure, I guess you could say. Yeah,
good for you. It's always daunting to kind of take that first step into something new and unfamiliar. So it's awesome that you're doing that.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I want to mention, after the workshop, both of them, they have a student discussion on Sentient Academy. It's free for you to continue to interact with them, even though the workshop is over. If you ever, encounter any challenges or you want them to take a look at your work after the workshop as you paint more pet portraits, feel free to post it there and just mention their name. They'll go on there and give you some feedback and stuff. So we build a whole community there to offer you guys that continuous interaction with the instructors. That way your learning will be continuous, not just like, I take a workshop and that's it. Like it's gonna be from now on, we're your resources. So feel free to reach out anytime.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely try to take advantage of these opportunities, guys, because like I said before, some of my past students are here. Like I'm mainly self-taught in oil painting. Like I never really had an instructor either. That's the reason why I enjoy teaching, is so that I can make it easier for other people who are seeking this kind of training out. So yeah, like I think I told Keith this a couple of times, but like if Sentient was like available or existed back when I was like trying to learn 5 years ago, I would definitely be much better than I am right now. It wouldn't even be funny how like how much improvement I would have been able to get. Because like a lot of things that I teach my students, I tell them, I'm kind of jealous because the things that you guys are able to get within, from like me telling them or like from them learning from other resources or other instructors, from places like Sentient, the things that they figure out in like the matter of a few days took me like a few months to like a year to figure out by myself, So definitely try to take advantage of all the resources that are given, especially by Sentient. They're really generous with the things that they offer. I mean, they even have a lot of good free content as well. Like I was using their free contents way before I was an instructor for them, like way before like I had any connections with them. I was already like using their resources because it was just so useful. I thought I came across like a gold mine when I came across it. I was like, oh my God, there are like actual videos by like, I mean, they're like, sneak preview videos, but they're still so high quality, like by like people like Josh Clare, Brian Mark Taylor, Alvin Vaselka. I was like, oh my God, like this is great, So, and I mean, like they're affordable too. It's like not even, it's definitely not going to break your bank. So I definitely think it's a good opportunity to study more.
Yeah, I think the community aspect is really amazing because that's, I think really that's what it all comes down to. And you're learning, you need that kind of environment of peers and other students you can work alongside and ask questions, and I think it's a really cool community, especially during these times right now.
During these times, yeah. You can't go to the live studio, so
yeah.
Yeah, and the inspiration behind that concept is we are trying to mimic what these masters are actually using in real life, right? So Brian Martell and I, we started the academy, and Brian has his work critiqued by other artists all the time. And you would think at his level, he would be all set, but no, he still paints something and he will ask, our other instructors, Alvin and, Josh, everybody to look at his work and give him feedback. And then that's how he fixed paintings or continue to improve. And we realized that is one big piece of learning process. And we need to make sure that is available to students. And that's why we decided, if we are going to, really help people, we need to make ourselves available. So you guys will experience the same thing. Don't take critique as kind of like a intimidating process. Take it more of a, it's a way for you to improve, because everybody's blinded by their own art. You can see some things that are so obvious to you because you've been staring at it for hours and hours, but it could be very obvious for someone else. So by putting yourself out there, and we are all very kind, we don't say mean things about your critique. It's really just give you constructive feedback to help you to find where to fix next time or this time. And you can actually see your work improve rather than sitting there just being really frustrated. Because I have the same thing. I'll sit there and just never figure out why it's not working. But then when he look at it, he just say, hey, that looks wrong. And I was like, oh, how could I not see that the whole time?
Yeah, definitely. So right now what I'm doing is I already established most of the dark shapes or the large shapes. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going in and getting some of the medium shapes. Trying to get to that 1 hour mark, just like yesterday, of kind of just establishing the overall sense of value shapes that are appearing within the structure. I'm just kind of getting a sense of that. Jared, what about you? What are you up to?
Just building the forms and light and shadow and trying to get an overall block in.
Oh, nice.
At the stage.
Looking good.
Yeah, we'll see. It's always fun to test yourself by trying to kind of invent or exaggerate certain elements.
Yeah.
Well.
Jared, the brown marks that you have laid down, are those notes of value that you're kind of referencing back to, or
in this area?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just kind of trying to put down some kind of abstract, free-flowing brushwork, and those are kind of notes of value. I'm trying to make sure I get a nice, deep, rich shadow over here, since I'm kind of changing the light up a little bit. So I might work back into it, but yeah, I was just kind of trying to put some marks down so I can kind of work into something and have some fun brush work in there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to have to make sure I go deep enough in value in the eyes right here, since I'm pushing that that light. So it's going to be casting a little bit of a shadow onto the eye itself. So I have to make sure I go deep enough in value so that it reads as light and shadow. And it's going to be really interesting because there's going to be I'm going to kind of push the eye a little bit and see if I can find a really nice vibrant green at the base of it. And kind of work into the eye itself, into that shadow, creating a little bit of a softer edge.
Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I'm reestablishing the darkest value that I could possibly actually go for. And a good way to mix a really dark value is basically mixing your viridian, your alizarin crimson, and your ultramarine blue. And by mixing these three colors together, it should equip you with a nice, dark, solid value that is a little bit more, has a little bit more chroma than just pure black. And this is usually like my go-to values for darks every time I'm painting.
I'm sorry, what were those three colors?
Alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and viridian.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and if you ever wanted to like push it a little bit, then you can add a little bit of ivory black in there. But overall, just these three colors should give you a nice, compelling dark. I usually don't believe in like, I guess color. What's the word for it? Like color ingredients or ingredients to like a certain color. Like I believe that you can achieve a certain color through many different ways. But there are some instances where stuff like this is like relevant. Where like if you mix these three colors together, you will get a really nice dark.
Yeah, by mixing that kind of dark, it's more vibrant and you can bend the temperature toward the warmer side by adding more, warmer color, or the cooler side by adding more of the green or blue. So your dark is not going to just be dead black, but if you just do straight black, it's going to look like a black hole right there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it's not like don't ever use black. I use black in my portraits. Hey, Kai, you need to reset your camera.
Oh, okay. All right, we're back. Okay.
Yeah, anyways, I was saying I do use black, but I don't use black, just pure black on it. I mix other colors into black. So usually when I use black, I would add transparent oxide yellow into my black to get that really nice greenish shadow for the portrait, on the shadow side of things. And I'll add some white into it to kind of lighten it up. But I don't just do pure black. If I want to do darks, I would do the same thing, mix blue and red to get different type of darks.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Curious, is anyone painting along, or everyone just kind of watching?
Just watching.
Watching? Cool.
Watching.
Cool.
I'm painting along with Kai.
Fun.
All right, so right now what I'm doing is I'm slowly venturing into territory of getting some of the smaller shapes within. So right now, I use plumb lines to help me figure out exactly where the eye is gonna end up going. It's slowly adjusting it as I go along.
Do you guys wash your brushes with Gamsol while you're painting, or just like a paper towel?
I use Gamsol and a paper towel, and I try and just wipe it out with a paper towel when I can. But to get really clean colors, I like to use Gamsol. But I think, do you use something different, Kai?
I try to avoid Gamsol with all my abilities, like these couple, these past few months, because like I just realized just how much they can damage the brush, even though I've been using them, like religiously using them every time. So I've been trying to limit my uses of them. I only touch them maybe at the very beginning where I'm applying a wash, and after that, I'm basically not touching them. Even after I paint, how I wash my brushes nowadays, it's kind of I just wipe it, and after that, I just dunk it in like a canister of either poppy or linseed oil. Yeah, and that way it just keeps them wet, and I just like wipe them off every time like I need to actually use them again.
Yeah.
Just feels like I burned through so many brushes before, and I realized it was the Gamsol that was burning the hairs off the brushes.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to limit the use of them, and I'm trying to maybe make the full switch to just purely using like just like oil instead of solvents in the future. Yeah. I know a couple of my good friends, like Ricky Mujica, like he made the switch because like he was using, I think it was Gamsol or turp or some sort of solvent, but he said it was like affecting his health, so he made the switch to just using pure oil. I don't know, I forgot which kind of oil it was. Maybe it was linseed, maybe it was something else.
I use that myself, so I can kind of talk about that.
You
usually don't use linseed to wash or rinse your brushes because they dry so fast. They dry faster.
Yeah.
Morgan Weisselin, he uses walnut oil, which I tried it before. It works really well. Even though walnut oil is more like slow drying, so you want to make sure by the end of the session you do a really good rinse. Still, you don't want the walnut oil to stay in your brush because they will dry eventually. And another alternative, Gambling is making, because they have come up with this blue line solvent-free mediums. It's called safflower seed oil. So it's in one of those blue label bottles.
Yeah.
Safflower seed oil doesn't really dry. Like it dries really, really slowly. And I have it in my studio right now, actually. It's really good to clean brushes with. And they're basically just like vegetable oil. So it's completely natural, even though after you wash it, you have pigment in it. So it's not really safe, but compared to Gamsol, it's more natural.
Mm-hmm.
And you just need to make sure after you rinse it, you want to squeeze out the oil of your bristle. So it's not going to mix into your oil paint. It's okay to mix it in, but you will slow the drying. So that's one thing I used. And also baby oil works too, because it's just mineral oil, and baby oil does not dry. So it's good to do it as a final rinse.
Yeah.
Instead of washing it at the end of the day, you just rinse it clean in baby oil, and you can even soak it in there.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need to clean your brushes at all. And I know Josh Clare, he uses motor oil, which is disgusting. It's like nasty, but it works. So there are all different ways. If you want to make it more like natural, if you paint inside, there are many alternatives you can try. And those are the things that I actually tried and found it's pretty useful. So if you want to try it out, you can maybe start there.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Really good tips.
Since we have a few beginner here, we can maybe discuss this about colors and color mixing. We talk about this several times every time we stream it, but I think there's a value to mention again. It's about muddy colors or chalky colors, and really it comes back to color temperature. So maybe you two can kind of have a discussion on that to help them understand what makes muddy or chalky colors.
Yeah, for sure. So in a huge portion of that preconceived notion of like chalky or muddy colors, you guys maybe have already heard of this concept where people say if you use too much white, you'll get like chalky colors, and if like you mix too much, you'll get muddy colors. Like both those are actually false. Like I think those kind of sayings come from the students happening across these issues by doing that particular thing, but they're not really understanding why it's happening. They just think maybe it's just some kind of cryptic thing that they're doing, but it's really not. So basically, warm like muddy colors or a muddy painting usually happens when both your light and your darks are warm, and there's no cool, and it's all warm. And chalky paintings usually come with both of your lights and darks being cool, and there is no warmth. See what I mean? So in order to kind of counterbalance that, especially when there's like a singular light source, because light sources, they're different too. Usually with like cooler light sources, your shadows will, initially be warm. And with warmer light sources, the opposite is true. So you always want to make sure that you're balancing out warms and cools to avoid stuff like that from happening. Yeah. Gary, do you want to have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. I think a lot of those things, those sayings or things get circulated from like some part of it's true in a way, but you don't really understand the full meaning behind it. So you just use it and believe it without really questioning it. So you really have to experiment and not try and get to the root of why people are telling you these things. And like a good example for me was people always say warm comes forward and cool goes back and recedes.
Uh-huh.
And the part of it that's true is because atmospheric particles in the air, when you're painting landscape, things can naturally get cooler as they go back because of the wavelengths of light and how things drop off, but it doesn't necessarily apply to a still life. So people would say like, oh, you can push things back by making them cooler in a still life. And that's definitely not true at all, because it's using a principle that works in some areas, but applying it to everything and not understanding really why it's happening in the first place.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Yeah. It's a really good point. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so far.
Jared, could you expand on that a little bit more? So in a landscape setting, I understand the particles and how like the chroma as you are looking away drops off. But in a portrait, would you explain what we would normally see and understand that a little bit better?
Are you referring to the distance in a portrait, or?
Well, just what you had said, which is warm and then cool. So in a portrait setting, I mean.
Yeah, that wouldn't really apply if you're painting a portrait in a landscape, perhaps, and you still have that atmospheric perspective. Then it might affect things as if you have different people in the background. But for the most part, I wouldn't say you would use that principle in a portrait or be thinking of it. A lot of it has to do with more with value control and the lightness and darkness of something. So if you want things to come forward, you could make it darker in value and richer in value, and then compress the values as it goes back, and that would give kind of that illusion of things coming forward. But I would say light, warm and cool would be more just in relation to the light source itself, not distance in that scenario.
Gotcha. So it's about light source in what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to add to that, Kai?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Yeah.
Did you have any things like that where you thought a certain principle applied to everything, or you were told something that you realized?
I mean, yeah, but mainly more so in value.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I was starting out, we always worked with, actually, no, I'm kind of glad you brought that up. Like, maybe this can apply to a lot of people here. When I was a student, when I was starting out, and I was like trying to learn how to draw, when we were working in the academy, we always had a strong lighting situation happening, or whenever we're painting, or whenever we're drawing anything, whether it be a cast sculpture or a portrait, figure, still life, So I was just so used to that strong lighting. Used to that strong light and dark separation that, sometimes when I'm painting out or when I'm drawing outside, we didn't have that strong lighting situation. Like if it's like an overcast day, like I remember I was like one day I was doing my homework. Our homework was we had to draw 100 figures from life. That was just our weekend homework for high school. And then I went to the park to go just draw some of the, people there. And then like I ended up, and people ended up like just kind of lining up, or not lining up, but like, gathering around and asking if I could like draw them. They see me like drawing. So I started doing that because I'm like, oh, cool, free subjects, right?
Yeah.
And I realized it was like an overcast day that day. So all the values on their face were relatively flat.
Yeah.
There was no overly strong shadows. And I realized I was like stumped because like I began making up the dark shadows as if they were there. Right. And that's like a big no-no. Like you don't want to do that because like it's you could, but it's like you're kind of avoiding learning what's in front of you, right? And you're kind of like retreating back to what you think you know. And that's usually not a good sign when it comes to learning. So it took me a while to kind of start understanding how to get my eyes to be a little bit more sensitive to, some of the more subtle nuances between light and darks.
Yeah.
So when I become more, aware and more sensitive to the subtle nuances, that's when, I was able to start capturing more so of the, subtle values. But yeah, that's like something that you want to watch out for, especially if you're used to always having like actual lighting hit your subject. You want to start letting yourself know that, okay, not everything is going to be that harsh in terms of a separation of values, especially under like, different lighting situations. So I usually, I've been teaching. So like I've seen students kind of falling back into that trap, the same trap that I fell back into every time they're painting or drawing. And it's not like a right. Actually, the thing that I saw that was like most interesting was one time, like this student was so used to drawing this portrait from this particular light where the light was hitting the face from like the left side that when one day I had her switch and the light was hitting her from the right side, she still insisted on trying to draw the shadow as if it was from the left side, even though it was like nowhere close to, like the value pattern. So that's really interesting. So just kind of be careful of that. We don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into always drawing or painting what we think is like a safe place or a safe spot, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah.
Yeah, painting outdoors and painting with natural light is a really good practice, because it changes the values completely, but there's so many rich color and tone and everything.
Definitely.
Okay, we're about an hour in, so we have 2 hours.
Okay.
Oh, cool. 2 hours in. Great. Oh, it's only been an hour? Oh, that went by fast.
YouTube pen too fast, man. Maybe you can eventually break out your one hair brush to draw out every single hair.
No whiskers.
I actually don't even have anything like that. I've only just been religiously just using my number 6 Opal Trakel long flat.
Yeah.
Like I've just been religiously just using this one brush for everything. It's really versatile, so I like it.
Kai, you've captured her so well, so quickly.
Oh, really? Oh, thank you.
Really cool.
Thank you. It's a good reference. I like it. Is this a person who provided a reference? Or I don't know if he's talking right now, because like I can't.
It's Nadia. Yeah, I provided that.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I figured. Yeah, no, it's a good reference. Thanks for giving me like options.
You're welcome.
You should try painting this too later.
Well, I actually did paint one of her. I'll send it to you on Instagram, but it's not this reference. It's one of the others that I sent you.
You try painting this one.
Yeah, I definitely am going to paint along with this.
Paint along. That'd be fun. Oh, actually, one thing that I want to tell everyone, especially because you guys are using services like Sentient, is be careful not to fall into this learning trap where, you have the video playing, right? And then every stroke that the teacher is making, every time the teacher makes a stroke, you pause the video and you just absentmindedly just copy the stroke without thinking why they're putting the stroke there. So then it's like that monkey see, monkey do situation. Be careful not to learn like that. If anything, like I recommend actually watching small portions, like small little chunks that you can digest, mentally, intellectually digest, and then trying that out yourself without, having to copy literally every single little thing, after every little single stroke. Because, my dad tried teaching me that way before and I learned nothing. Like I was like more concerned with just like matching him without really thinking about why he's putting the colors on there. So that's like kind of like a learning tip. Because I know because it's like so convenient to just kind of do that to try to make it perfect. But when we do that, it's we lose a lot of like the thinking process, right? So just kind of be careful with that when you guys are, rewatching these videos. It's much more beneficial to just kind of sit down, and maybe just watch like the first, like in 5-minute intervals or in like 10-minute intervals. It's much more, useful to do that as opposed to just, pausing every like 3 seconds and just, copying every little thing that we do. Yeah. Cause like you're going to get too caught up with just copying and not caught up with like thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's just like a little advice.
That's really good tip. And I'm glad Kai mentioned it because, like he said before, he's teaching here, he's actually using it. So there's a lot of actual user experience he's providing here. And when we design the courses, we make the video shorter. Yeah. So you're not going to sit there and zombie out for 3 hours. And like he said, always ask why. When you're watching the video, always ask why. And for me, the best way to learn is I would set a goal and say, now I'm going to learn about edges. Then I pay really close attention to the video and see how the instructor handled the edges. And I'll ask myself why they're making it loose edge here, why this edge is harder than the other one. And then when you have that focus, you will listen carefully to their instruction and you pick up a lot of hidden nuggets that you otherwise would have missed because you're not paying attention to that. So always kind of find a topic or focus as you go into the lesson and then get something out of that and then go try it out. because you already think about it, when you try it out, you pay extra attention. So every single stroke you're making after that is deliberate, and that will get your improvement so much faster than just blindly copying and then you fail and over again, you're not going anywhere. So if you do come back to review the lesson or have other new lessons coming up, that's what I would recommend you to use it, because I use it myself. Like every single course, I personally use them to make sure it's a good content before we put it out. And I really benefit from all our lessons. Like one day, Kai, we're doing the live streaming. Instead of copying exactly what he was doing, I just, pay attention to the methods that he's doing things. And turn out I painted the same model completely different from the way he approached it. But that is still one of my best work I've ever done. But it's kind of inspired by him. So that's some tips for you.
Like, don't copy what I'm doing, but try to, learn the methodology and the philosophy behind what I'm doing, and then apply it to yourself. Like I always tell students, just like yesterday, I forgot who asked me. Someone asked me, how to kind of, how to like position your composition, like what kind of like format they should use. I'm like, you could use whatever format speaks to you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like to tell students how to see, I tell students how to see, but I don't want to tell them like what they're seeing, because what they see might be different than what I see. I can just tell them how I'm seeing what I'm seeing, right? Like, what is the thought process behind what I'm trying to look for? And then they can use the same thought process, use the same tools, and I guess apply that to their vision, right? It's kind of like, I'm teaching you how to use the tools, right? I'm teaching you how to use like this axe, but I'm not telling you which tree to cut down. You cut down whatever tree you want to cut down, but I'm telling you how to properly hold the axe. I'm telling you how to properly, like how to stand, like, all that stuff, right? So it's like, try to copy how I hold an axe and how I swing the axe, but don't copy like which tree because like by the time you get there, I've already cut down a tree. So it's like, like what are you going to do? Right. So, find your own path, definitely, but use what we tell you as tools. It'll be helpful. Have anything to add, Jared?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you have to kind of decide when you're going into a workshop. I remember an instructor telling me, am I here to learn how to see or to learn a technique? And those are some important things to have a distinction between the two, kind of going into it, what you're wanting to get out of it. So it's important to do both, I'd say, because there are times where you want to learn specific techniques, but I think the most important thing is to really just develop your visual language and how to interpret the world around you in your own way. And because there's a lot of foundational elements that you can take and then add your own spin on.
I remember what like, speaking of what teachers told us, I remember the most distinctive thing I ever remember a teacher saying to me. It was actually Daniel Keyes. Did he say this to you too? But I don't know. He said when I was studying with him, like, he says, the worst thing that you can do as a student is to try to show off to me.
Yeah.
And I feel so bad doing that, because I was like exactly trying to show off to him. Like, I was like, hey, I can paint, Yeah. Because like, he's like, and because like he says that, if you show off to me, like, the best, the worst thing that can happen is like, like you're showing off, but like, you're still making a lot of mistakes, and it's like, what are you even showing off, right? The best thing that can happen is like you just get a good job from me and a pat on the back. Are you really here to just hear that? Are you really here just to hear me giving you like a good job and a pat on the back? Or are you here to learn? Right. Yeah. So that was like that's like something I tell all my students nowadays too. It's like, don't try to show off to me. First of all, like, it's like, once you try showing off to me, it's easy to fall into the trap of using methods and techniques that worked for you in the past, because then you're like less willing to kind of put that down and try out the newer stuff that we are talking about in class, because you're like, oh man, if this doesn't come out good, he's not going to be impressed, right? And I'm talking about this through the perspective of a student. I used to be like in that exact same position when I was learning. Like, every time like I was near like a teacher, for some reason I just wanted to prove myself to them. Like,
Yeah.
you know, but at the end of the day, like when I actually, especially when I started teaching myself, I realized that's like a really stupid way of thinking, because it's like you're there to learn, right? Like they're not going to give you a gold medal for like having the best painting in the class, because it's a class. In a class, it's like where you need to be vulnerable. It's where you need to kind of let go of, you know, things that made you feel, I guess, safe before, especially if you're learning a different technique within that particular class, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of let all that go. Like I remember Michelle Dunaway told me, like, leave your ego at the door. Like, don't bring your ego inside the classroom, right? Like, really try to leave that by the door, because you're just gonna unclog all the, you know, if you're like a sponge, by leaving your ego at the door, you're basically unclogging all like the holes, and then you're just gonna have all your holes open to absorb everything that can be absorbed from that particular lesson or from that particular workshop. You know, so that's like a very important, I guess, mindset that everyone should try and adopt. I mean, assuming you guys don't already, like, I'm assuming that everyone already has like a pretty healthy mindset when it comes to, you know, workshops and learning. But it's just like kind of a good tip. Yeah.
Hey Kai, you need to reset your camera.
Oh, great. Thanks for letting me know. All right. Cool.